Most of the retirement conversations I hear come back to the same question. Should I do a Roth conversion? And usually the thinking goes something like this. If tax rates are going up, convert now. If they're going down, wait. It sounds reasonable, it's tidy, but here's what I've come to understand after years of working through these decisions with real people in real financial situations. That framework is incomplete, and acting on it without the full picture can quietly cost you. There's a more precise way to think about this, one that doesn't require you to predict the future or guess where Congress is headed. It starts with a single number, a break-even point. And once you understand it, the entire conversation shifts. That's what we're going to walk through today. The conventional wisdom on Roth conversions has been repeated so many times it feels like settled truth. Convert when you expect your tax rate in retirement to be higher than it is today. Hold off when you expect it to be lower. It's the version most people hear from friends, from articles, sometimes even from advisors. The problem isn't that this advice is wrong exactly. The problem is that it's too blunt for the complexity most of us are actually living in. Think about everything that shapes your tax picture in retirement. Required minimum distributions begin at 73 and can push your taxable income higher than you planned. Social Security benefits get phased into your taxable income gradually, depending on how much other income you have. Medicare surcharges, known as IRMA, can activate unexpectedly if your income crosses certain thresholds. And the tax cuts established under the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act are currently set to expire after 2025, which would move many households into higher brackets automatically. Your tax rate in retirement is not a fixed number. It's a moving target. And then there's another layer the simple rule misses entirely. It doesn't account for where the money funding your tax bill is coming from. It doesn't consider whether some of your IRA dollars might actually have a lower effective tax cost than your marginal bracket suggests. It doesn't address whether a conversion today could open the door to future backdoor Roth contributions. This is where Vanguard's research enters the picture, and it's worth paying attention to because their findings challenge some very deeply held assumptions. According to their work, your expected future tax bracket is actually not the most important factor in a Roth conversion decision. There are three other variables that carry more weight, and in many scenarios, they completely reverse the traditional guidance. Before we get to those, let's establish the framework that changes how this conversation works. It's called the break-even tax rate, or BETR. The break-even tax rate is the specific future tax rate at which converting to a Roth and leaving money in a traditional IRA produce exactly the same after-tax outcome. Not approximately the same, precisely the same. It's a mathematical point of neutrality. Above that rate, a conversion leaves you in a better position. Below it, the traditional IRA wins. What makes BETR so useful is that it removes guesswork from the center of the decision, rather than asking, do I think taxes will be higher in the future, which no one can know with certainty. You ask a more grounded question. What future tax rate would actually make this conversion worth doing? That's a question you can actually answer. Here's the detail that tends to stop people in their tracks when they first hear it. In most real-world situations, your break-even rate is lower than your current marginal bracket. Not slightly lower, often meaningfully lower. And that changes everything. Because if your break-even rate is lower than your bracket today, then a Roth conversion can make financial sense even if your future rate ends up being lower than it is right now. You don't need your future rate to exceed your current rate. You only need it to exceed your BETR. That's the reframe, and it's not a small one. Let me show you exactly how this plays out using a scenario from Vanguard's own research, because the numbers tell the story better than any summary can. Meet Jill. She's currently in the 35% federal tax bracket. She's 20 years from retirement, and her best estimate is that she'll land in the 24% bracket once she stops working. If you apply the traditional rule, the answer seems obvious. Don't convert. Her future rate is well below her current rate. Paying 35 cents on the dollar today to avoid paying 24 cents later looks like a bad trade. But let's run the actual math. Jill has $100,000 in a traditional IRA she's considering converting. If she converts today, she owes $35,000 in taxes, which she pays from her taxable brokerage account, not from the IRA itself. The $100,000 moves into a Roth and grows tax-free for the next 20 years. Vanguard's model assumes it triples over that period, reaching $300,000. Now, what about the $35,000 she used to cover the tax bill? Had she not converted, that money would have stayed invested in her taxable account. Vanguard models it doubling after taxes over the same 20 years, growing to approximately $70,000. So here's the side-by-side comparison. If Jill converts, her Roth reaches $300,000, fully tax-free. But she gave up $70,000 in future taxable account growth to pay for it. Her net after-tax position, approximately $230,000. If Jill doesn't convert, her traditional IRA also reaches $300,000. But when she withdraws in retirement at her expected 24% rate, she owes roughly $72,000 in taxes, leaving her with about $228,000 after tax. The conversion comes out ahead by a meaningful margin, even though Jill is currently in the 35% bracket and expects to be in the 24% bracket in retirement. By traditional logic, this shouldn't work. By BETR logic, it makes complete sense. Why? Because Jill's actual break-even rate is 23.3%, not 35%. Here's how that number is derived. You take her projected future Roth balance of $300,000 and set it equal to her future traditional IRA balance multiplied by 1 minus the BETR. Solving for BETR gives you 23.3%. That's the rate at which both paths produce identical after-tax wealth. Since her expected retirement rate of 24% sits above that threshold, even just slightly, the conversion wins. She didn't need her future tax rate to be higher than 35%. She only needed it to be higher than 23.3%, and it is. What this example reveals is that the traditional Roth conversion rule was never really asking the right question. Comparing today's bracket to tomorrow's bracket misses the break-even point entirely. And when that point is lower than people assume, they end up leaving conversions on the table that would have genuinely benefited them. Vanguard's research identifies 3 additional factors beyond BETR that influence Roth conversion outcomes. Factors that, in many situations, carry even more weight than the tax rate comparison alone. Understanding how those variables interact with your specific situation is where real planning precision lives. If working through the BETR calculation yourself sounds like a reasonable Saturday afternoon, and I genuinely mean that, Vanguard has a publicly available Roth conversion calculator that does this math for you. You input your numbers, and it walks you through the decision with your specific situation in mind. I'd encourage you to use it before drawing any firm conclusions about whether a conversion makes sense for you. If you work with a financial planner, this is worth bringing to your next conversation. Ask about your BETR. Ask how your projected income from RMDs, Social Security, and investment withdrawals might interact in the years ahead. The answers may surprise you. The most valuable thing I hope you take from this is not a rule. It's a question. Not, will my taxes be higher later, but what is my actual break-even rate, and where does my expected retirement income fall relative to that number? That shift in framing, from a comparison to a calculation, is what moves this decision from guesswork to genuine strategy. Take a moment this week to look at your own IRA balances, your projected income in retirement, and what your tax picture might realistically look like in your early retirement years before RMDs begin. That window, between retirement and 73, is often the most valuable time to consider conversions, when income may be temporarily lower and the math may work meaningfully in your favor. If you gave this a new way to think about your own situation, I'd love to hear what came up for you. Share this with someone navigating the same decision. It might just change the direction of a very important conversation.